and welcome to my spoiler review for Eternals, where I really struggled over what expression to have in the thumbnail. I didn't want to do super excited because I don't think that's the correct representation of this movie. But I didn't want to do a raised eyebrow because I don't want to be overly, I was going to say overly critical, but I have a lot of criticisms of the movie, but I guess I didn't want to hate on it. And I think that's especially with the way things are going for Eternals, that's what a raised eyebrow might imply. I want you to know this is a safe space for MCU fans and Eternals fans, just like it's been a safe space for, most of the DC movies as well. It's tough out there, and I really do think that Wonder Woman 1984 is the perfect comp for this movie. And now, minus the Steve Trevor controversy with what they did in the sequel, but otherwise, now MCU fans know what it's like for Wonder Woman fans or anyone who appreciated Wonder Woman 1984 for what Patty Jenkins tried to do, no matter how misguided it ultimately was. I would say I feel the same way about both movies, although Eternals did not make me cry. I did cry during Wonder Woman 1984 and during my spoiler review. All right, so yes, Eternals is down to the low 50s on Rotten Tomatoes. I never thought it would get that low. As I recently said, I thought it would stay in the high 50s, but if it goes into the 40s, that's just people out for blood with Marvel. It's crazy. It's very surprising, and we're going to continue that discussion in another video. But it's tough I think this also speaks to how little there is to say about Eternals itself, because first the discussion was dominated by its end credit scenes, and now everyone's talking about the Rotten Tomatoes score. And I think, that's an unfortunate reality for this movie. But now it's time for you to weigh in as you finally join this controversial conversation that's been going on for 2 weeks now. That film festival debut was a bad idea. This conversation started way too early. Imagine if we'd only started this early this week. I think that would have really helped to get audiences in here faster. I think it's had 2 weeks to settle and to fall, for the score to fall even lower. Wow. I'm very curious to see what the audience scores will be. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts about Chloe Zhao's film down below. And this is the spoiler review, so go to town. So this spoiler review, it's interesting. I guess it's fair to say that even though here's the thing. There's not that much to say about Eternals itself, but there's a lot to say about Eternals and from many other perspectives. And I'm going to be covering this in a plethora of videos. So this spoiler review is going to focus on the film itself. Then I'm going to be doing separate videos on each of the 2 end credit scenes, the characters, I'm going to rank them, a video on the future of LGBT representation, and not just the MCU, but the upcoming DC movies as well. And then on Monday, once we see what the box office and audience scores are, we'll talk about the box office on Sunday on Movie Math, but then I'm going to do a whole look at what's going on with Phase 4, because Black Widow had a lot of problems too. So we're going to take a deep dive on that. So for this spoiler review, again, trying to, we want to be kind to MCU fans. So for this spoiler review, I'm going to do the opposite of what I did for my non-spoiler review, and that's I'm going to start with what I did like about the movie. I'm going to start with the positivity, because the cloud of negativity hanging over this film is pretty intense and a real downer, I'm sure, for MCU fans. Now you know what it's been like for DC fans all this time. I'm really curious to see, and we don't even know how MCU fans are going to react. Are they going to say, this is amazing, we love it, the way, a lot of DC fans reacted to the more controversial DC movies? Or will MCU fans be like, it is problematic? I'm very, very curious to see what happens. Oh, this is fascinating. All right, so, the good. Kumail Nanjiani. I loved him in this movie. He really delivers a badly needed bolt of energy to the film. That's what his real power is in the movie. He's funny. And he looks fantastic. Although, as I said in my non-spoiler review, I feel guilty complimenting him on his transformation, his physical transformation, when it's pretty clear he took steroids to achieve it. Now, as many of you pointed out, other actors take steroids, and that's unfortunately true. But I haven't seen anyone go through the same transformation that Kumail Nanjiani has gone through. Maybe Zac Efron to a degree. It's really, really shocking. And I, of course, would not encourage anyone to take that kind of poison into their bodies. So it's hard, but he looks amazing. It's weird. It's really weird. It's a weird position to be put in, that Kumail Nanjiani would benefit so much from doing something that's so wrong. But yeah, now he's funny and a matinee idol. I'm curious to see where his career goes from here. I would definitely cast him. I would have cast him before. I've always been a Kumail Nanjiani fan, but I think now he could do a lot more lead action roles. I'm very, very curious to see where this goes for him. Now, he only had like 2 small downsides to his role, and one is that his big Bollywood dance number, I feel, did not deliver. I thought it was surprisingly low energy, which is what Bollywood dance numbers are all about. Lots of energy. Like, I always talk about barfing up fantasy for Disney live action. Well, Bollywood invented barfing up fantasy. And while this was certainly lovely, I think there could have been so much more. And I think because Chloe Zhao's not a comedic director, I mean, he's playing Ikaris. He could have flown. Why only talk about him hanging from wires? Why not do a funny bit like that? I mean, Kingo was my favorite character in the movie, and anything involving him I thought was far more entertaining than the rest of the film. So I would have watched a whole Kingo movie, to be honest with you. And maybe someday we'll get one. Although there is one other problem that might hinder that, which we'll talk about in a moment. But Kumail Nanjiani didn't get to do any dancing in that number, which I thought was weird. He did do the smolder, though. He has the smolder, which I'm impressed with. He can do the smolder. But yeah, so he didn't get to do any dancing, and he didn't really get to do any action either. He had a little bit of action, but he physically transformed himself into an action star. I mean, he never even took his shirt off. He took his shirt off in real life. I'm glad he did, because no one got to see it here. So it was weird. I think that he made a lot of assumptions as to what his role would entail when he got signed to do a Marvel movie. But I think when he showed up on set looking the way that he does, I would have rewritten it and been like, we got to do something with this. It's incredible. But I really liked the on-set stuff. I thought that was hilarious. You know I love entertainment, commentary, and jokes. In Mortal Kombat, who's my favorite character? Johnny Cage. So to see him going around his set, and I love the way he said he called the Eternals his friends from college. I mean, I just loved it. I thought it was so entertaining. I thought giving him his sidekick, Harish Patel as Karun, his assistant, that guy was great. I loved him. I loved the backstory of, funny story. At first, Karun thought I was a vampire and tried to stake me. I would have loved to have seen that. What's the number 1 rule of storytelling? Show, don't tell. So, oh well. But I enjoyed what I got. It was very funny. I didn't understand the Bruce Wayne reference. Someone was like, he's like your Alfred. I'm like, Bruce Wayne doesn't crack jokes. He's not making jokes a mile a minute. I didn't see Bruce Wayne at all in Kingo. So I was not only offended in bringing in DC characters, but I didn't even think you don't understand Batman if you would make that correlation. I mean, you would only understand Batman. Let's not go on a tangent here. As a Batman fan, I'm capable of doing that to discuss this whole thing. But let's just say, if someone would make that comparison who had only a surface understanding of who Bruce Wayne Batman is. But back to Kingo, I enjoyed his private plane, and I thought it was also funny that was from a family of actors, where he was his great-grandfather and his grandfather and his father. It's a Bollywood dynasty. Again, would have loved to have seen this. This is like so much better than the movie that we got. And I thought that while him doing a video during the film, like a movie within a movie, was a bit of a ripoff of Peter Parker doing that, I allowed it because it was hilarious, and I enjoyed it here as well. The best line in the movie, in my opinion, because it so came out of left field and was so funny, was when Druid like challenges Kingo's videos. He's like, how many views do you have? And then Kingo saying, I don't do it for the views, was hilarious. Again, it's entertainment, commentary, and humor, which I adore, but it was just such a great line. And I think that it's what this movie needed, and it was just fantastic. I loved it. And again, because that was so unexpected, and it was meta in a way. It was just phenomenal. I absolutely adored it. But then the other problem was that after all that fantastic, getting to know Kingo, it was weird that he basically gave humanity a thumbs down and bailed on the final fight. He was like, you know what? I think it's cool if we waste this planet. See ya! And I was like, where are you going? What? I'm on this planet? Don't say that, Kingo! And I have to say that Karun was pretty cool about it. He'd be like, I've served you for 50 or 30, whatever years it was, and what about me? So it was weird. It's hard to root for a character that is cool with everyone on Earth being killed when you're one of the people on Earth. But that's how charismatic Nanjiani is. I still liked his character the most. I'd still like to see more of him. But again, I'm going to do a deep dive into all the characters in a separate video. But because Kumail Nanjiani I thought was the best character, not just the best character, but the best thing in the whole movie, period, I wanted to highlight him here. Also, I wanted to touch a little bit on the steroid conversation, because I know some of you believe that he just worked out to look like that. You don't get a bigger jaw and bridge on your nose from working out. There's no workout you can do that does that. All right, next up, what did I like? The powers. The VFX on the powers. So well realized. I particularly love the way Ikaris, Makari, and Thena were done. Ikaris, the I-beams. I love I-beams in general. I could watch them all day, but the gold I-beams and the way Richard Madden kind of, he really did a good job, acting. I mean, you would think he just stands there and they have I-beams come out. But I feel like he did the face acting that was necessary. And I thought the clever way they had him use the I-beams, some of the struggles. I've never seen anyone have a problem with I-beams before. I guess Zod was on the receiving end, but a character that we were supposed to be relating to and rooting for, at least at that point. So I thought that was cool. But I particularly loved also the way he flew. It just seemed so effortless and beautiful and graceful. I mean, he just literally floated through the air, like a ballet dancer almost. And it was such an interesting way to see someone fly. I've never seen them do that in a live action movie before. I guess that's true. There was a gracefulness and a delicateness to all of the Eternals in their actions, and a regalness that I thought was really unique and cool and different to see. So I loved that. It's a little bit like Timothée Chalamet's performance over in Dune. Usually in action movies, everyone's like a gruff, tough person, right? But this delicate, regal ballet element, but yet still very powerful, physically and in terms of personality, is a nice change of pace. I like it a lot. So that was great. You notice I didn't reference Wonder Woman 1984 because the VFX there were awful. All right, so anyway, Makari, I love to watch her run. I thought also the way they handled the surroundings and stuff like that. We've seen some great speedsters, but I still feel this one was the best. And Lauren Ridloff, she just looked great. And she radiated like this glow, even though she couldn't speak. She just had such a force of personality, even though she had very little screen time. Very few lines. Every time you saw her, she just put a smile on your face because she had a smile on her face. I just really liked her a lot. And then Thena, of course, Angelina Jolie, she knows how to vogue, but in a good way. The weapons creation was just stunning. Angelina Jolie is a very experienced VFX actress, particularly with Maleficent, and I thought that background served that experience served her very well here. And I thought that the Thena stuff was fantastic. I really liked it a lot. And I thought she created some gorgeous weapons, boy. It's too bad you can't save these, Thena. They're really nice. They're sweet. All right, I also really like the costumes. We always talk about how Marvel costumes all look like they came from the same costumer, and they do. But despite the fact that they don't come from the same places within the MCU, how do people in space have the exact same costumes as people on Earth, right? I've always been frustrated by it. But I like that these costumes felt a little different finally. I liked the gold energy that created them. I was like, that's beautiful. And I also like in the designs throughout the it's a little like Jupiter's Legacy, but the alien pattern that was within the fabric. And I also like they had more hard pieces. As a fan of comic books and the X-Men in particular, I really liked the gauntlets on their uniforms. I was like, I would like some of those, please. Those were very cool. I like thumb holes and stuff. It just felt very powerful to me. And I was like, you guys all look great. I mean, there was some spandex, but it felt like less spandex and more hard pieces with it. Like Thena had a really cool looking costume. The way the bodice was done, I really, really thought it was cool. And also, again, the way the actors were carrying themselves. Everyone had great posture in this movie. And some of the best floating, not just flying, but floating I've ever seen. I mean, it was really cool. They just did a great job. I mean, whenever they would levitate, I'd be like, well, I'm liking this a lot. This is cool. It's like just levitate. It's like I said, it's like a screensaver, but like a really good one. One that you would look at for a few minutes before, going about your business. All right, next up, the action scenes. And as I said in my non-spoiler review, there were 3 that I really, really liked. The first was the opening with the arrival of these alien overlords on Earth. And they worked together not only did they work well together as a team, but it was like watching a Justice League sequence. And, because of the brightness of the cinematography, I think they use natural light, right? That's one of the things that blinded Kevin Feige to all the problems with Chloe Zhao's work. He's like, but she's using natural light. You're like, doesn't matter. It's still boring, Kevin. But anyway, it reminded me a little bit more of the Justice League animated series because it was so bright, and it felt a little bit more like the comics, the Justice League comics. So it was neat. We had a speedster, we had the Flash, we had Wonder Woman, we had Superman. I was enjoying myself. I guess Kingo's kind of like Green Lantern, but it was good. Then I liked the fight in the Amazon jungle. Although why Druig's cult is supposed to be a good thing, I have no idea. He's like, I took away everybody's self-control and they're just mindless creatures. But I think, I think no human would voluntarily sign up. I guess he would, most of the time I guess he would just end fights by just ending them. But I don't know. It didn't seem like a great cult to me. But anyway, that whole sequence was really cool, particularly because of Ikaris, the way he would fly through the trees, chasing the deviants, and I liked again the struggle with his I-beams. Kingo had his biggest discharge. I mean, it was pretty well choreographed. I remember when I was watching that fight when I saw the movie, I was like, oh, this is actually pretty well done. Chloe Zhao, I think, kind of did deliver an action sequence, even though it took so long to get to this, but it is pretty good. I mean, again, we don't know if it's her. We don't know if it's the backup Marvel directing team that says, don't worry, we'll handle your action scenes for you. But I thought it was nice. It was pretty. Great location. And again, a great location for the final fight with everyone versus Ikaris. Well, whoever was left. They killed off some of the Eternals. I was surprised. I was like, Ajak and Gilgamesh. I was like, and we'll talk about some of that stuff in a minute. But and Kingo decided to sit it all out. But, I liked the final fight was good because I always enjoy a Superman takedown, which is what this was. And I liked, again, the setting. I thought it was really, really, really beautiful on that beach. I was like, it's nice here. They ruined it with that giant celestial rock formation, though. We're going to talk about that, too. But with fights, I would want to see these fights again. I would definitely, when this comes to Disney Plus, I'm definitely well, maybe we'll do a watch along. We have to decide. I mean, it's hard to decide because they've messed up the release strategy, but they might be getting to a point where they skip PVOD and go right to Disney Plus, which is what they're doing with Shang-Chi. So we'll see. If they did that with Eternals, although I don't know if any of you would want to watch it again. I would like to just see those three sequences to be honest with you. All right, so right on the line between good and bad is the Eternals mythology. I really liked, again, those gold lines. I thought they were very hypnotic. I thought they interested me. I was like, this is pretty nice. And I liked the Domo, their ship. That was a cool ship. I liked the sound that it made. It was very like 2001. I liked how it hovered. I thought I kind of liked it. I came to kind of like it in the inside. I liked that ship. And then I liked seeing them through history. We saw the Ishtar Gate in the trailers, but seeing the Hanging Gardens of Babylon was really beautiful. But then, now we're going into the negative. I was like, how do you have the VFX team build the Gardens of Babylon and then show them for just a few seconds? I mean, it was insane to me. I was like, why don't we have like a whole scene here maybe or something? It was just really bizarre. It was like Cliff Notes history. Like, I think Chloe Zhao was like, look, I'm highlighting the history that Hollywood doesn't usually highlight. And I'm like, but are you really? I think you're just getting points for it because you're not really doing it. I don't think anyone who watches this movie would learn anything about the cultures that are highlighted. I mean, they don't even make it that clear. I mean, they give the year, but they don't make it clear as to what culture or what country they're in or what they're highlighting. And so, again, I feel like she's just doing it. Chloe Zhao is just doing it for points. And then, speaking of not making things clear, I've seen a lot of confusion over the powers of the Eternals. For instance, a number of people are saying, oh, Phastos created the atomic bomb. I think they made it pretty clear that he did not actually create anything. He would just kind of nudge humanity now and then, and they would get there on their own. So I don't even know why he felt so guilty about it. You would think that, because they're robots, as we find out, we'll talk about that in a moment, but you would think that he would have why would you create a robot which was supposed to have everyone on a planet die eventually and then give it empathy? I'd be like, they're uncaring robots who just sit there and watch, like Ikaris. But anyway, yeah, it just made no sense. So that just didn't make any sense to me. And then also the fact that, I mean, I thought it was pretty clear what they were saying, but people seem to be confused. And then also I've seen confusion over Cersei's powers. I read a review where someone said she can just turn things into dust. And I was like, how do you not get that that's not at all what Cersei can do? I mean, Cersei can transmute things. She can transmute anything into something else. I mean, she didn't turn Sprite into dust at the end of the movie. She turned her into a human child so they can deal with the fact that actress is going to age in real life. It was frustrating to me. I was like, she turned one thing into dust, she turned another thing into flower petals. Are you not paying attention at all? All right, so, I mean, I know it's a little boring, but focus! This whole movie needed to focus, which is my thesis statement, which I'm going to say at the end of the review. All right, so, then I also didn't like the fact that the whole thing is supposed to be learning about the Eternals, but yet we only really get to the heart of them in a monologue from Arishem, who I guess is the villain, right? I guess technically he's the villain of the piece, and he just monologues the whole thing. He's like, oh, finally you asked, Cersei, let me tell you everything. So he gave the whole purpose, the whole origin, and basically they're robots, they're just basically robots. So I don't know how you can do robots in a movie and make them not like less interesting than Ultron and Vision. It's like, we have the greatest artificial intelligent robot of all time with Vision. Why would we go make a substandard version with the Eternals? Also, Phastos, his whole thing is technology. How did he not realize that they were all robots to begin with? And then once he's told that they're robots, how does he not immediately open someone up and be like, let's see what's going on here? It doesn't make any sense. I mean, his whole thing, if I were another Eternal, I would turn to Phastos and be like, how did you miss this? And then, of course, the problem that I highlighted in my non-spoiler review is that this is a movie about passive characters. The Eternals overall, their whole mission statement is sit back and relax, And then also your lead character is Cersei, and Gemma Chan is given a very passive role to play and a passive performance. She doesn't even feel bad. She's not even a character who's like, I want to do stuff. I want to interfere. She's like, you know what? I'm good. She didn't. I guess all the Eternals felt a little guilty, but it's not even like she wasn't raging against the machine, which would end up being herself. And then Ikaris even made for a passive villain. He didn't even really have too much going on. Like, why did he do what he did? Because someone else told him to. He was like, Arishem says this is the way. So that's what I'm going to do. So because everybody was so passive and because the story was so passive, that means there's no weight to any reveals or any decisions, including even Thena and the mad weary that she suffers from with the crazy spelling. They're like, let's put a bunch of apostrophes in there, man. But anyway, I'm like, I didn't know what Thena was like before. I don't really know what Thena's like now. And then they're like, oh, I'll wipe you clean, but you'll still be the same person. And I'm like, how is that true? You're going to have no memories. You're going to be a blank slate. And it was proven that I don't believe that I think your memories are what make you you. I think if you wipe all that clean, I really don't think there's an argument to be made that that's okay, to be honest with you. And also she, I don't know, like I felt like they were like, oh, it's actually her past memories coming back from, when she was erased other times. And you're like, but she didn't know anything of value. And we didn't see any cool flashbacks to other planets with the other Eternals. Like it was such a wasted opportunity to explore the Mad Weary. And especially when Angelina Jolie has the Mad Weary. She looked cool painting under that tree, I guess, but come on. All right, so, and then we're just getting started with some of the bad stuff. So that's, on the line. Now, fully in the bad category, too many metaphors. Like, wow, I know that directors, especially award-winning directors like Chloe Zhao, love metaphors and comparisons. Oh, this is like that. This might seem like a comic book blockbuster, but it's actually very similar to this, very classic old story so it will give it more gravitas and importance. But I think she went overboard. It's just a grab bag of that stuff. Like, for instance, the DC references. Chloe Zhao, some of you pointed out, has put them in because she loves DC. Well, if you love DC, you would have realized that you got some of them wrong, and it's kind of disrespectful. And also, everybody's left wondering, are Batman and Superman real in this world, or are they comic book characters? And then you're saying, oh, the MCU is real, but DC is just fictional, Like that seems like fighting words. I mean, she didn't even clarify, is there a possibility for a crossover between the MCU and the DCEU? Or again, is she just, are these characters just referencing comic books in the MCU? So that's sloppy. And then the Peter Pan thing. That's another problem with what Chloe Zhao did. Like Peter Pan, that whole comparison was only there for an interesting conversation. If you're going to make these kind of comparisons and you want them to work and to be appreciated, it has to be throughout the entire context of the film. You can't bring them in and out just to be like, to show how clever you are. And that's how the Peter Pan thing read to me. And then also, so they're saying there's a love triangle like Peter Pan between, in the story it's Peter, Wendy, and Tink. So they're saying here that that's Ikaris, Circe, and Sprite. But here's the thing. Tinkerbell was not a child. She was a tiny adult. She was a miniature adult. She wasn't underage. And I guess technically Sprite isn't either, but these are hairs that you don't split. If it's an underage body, underage. So I thought that was extremely questionable, and I felt I'm surprised that Kevin Feige and company, when they even just when they saw it in the script, but certainly when they saw it in the cut, weren't like, I think this should be removed because it's making me uncomfortable. So I thought that was a problem. And then also, why would Arishem make a child robot? I just think that's cruel. I mean, maybe, I was talking about this to a friend and they were like, maybe to convince everyone that they're real because they're children versions of them, so they must have all been children at one point. But it's like, but Sprite never ages. So why would the robots assume that they were children at one point who did age? It just didn't make any sense, and it was never explained. Arishem's just weird and was like, this one shall be a child. You're like, what? And then also, I didn't like saying that classic mythology was actually based on the Eternals. The Greek myth of Ikaris, that's Richard Madden's character. Athena, oh, that was just Thena, and they got the name wrong. You're like, what do you have against ancient Greece, Chloe Zhao? And then also, they were so on the nose. I was like, wow, that really is Athena, and that really is Ikaris. And they actually had Ikaris fly into the sun. I don't think he's dead. Unless I see him melt, I don't think he's dead. He's too good a character to kill. And then also, even they were like, oh, Thena, got it on with King Arthur. And I'm like, barf. It was too much. And then the Deviants are definitely under the bad category. I mean, they were a very cool design. They, in fact, remind me, if you've been to Disney World, they have this Maleficent float where they didn't want to spend a lot of money to actually make Maleficent. So they did like this avant-garde modern art version, and that's what the Deviants look like. And so I thought, I don't know, Karun, I think, said it well when he was like, oh, these are beautiful creatures. And I thought they were very pretty. I thought they were interesting. But they had absolutely no development. And for something that's supposed to be the grand enemy of the Eternals, they were just unthinking plot devices. And then there's Kro. There's a big debate. Who's playing Kro? Who's voicing Kro? Who cares? He has a few lines, then he gets killed by Thena. Like, it's cool to see him evolve a little bit, right? To see him take the other Eternals' powers and upgrade. Like a transformer, basically. And I thought, when Thena killed him, I was like, that was pretty cool. But it happened so quickly, and we didn't care about Kro. We were like, meh. And I was like, what about the fact that in the comics, Thena is historically romantically involved with the Deviants, because she thinks that they should all get along. She's like, they're cool. They're great in bed. Hey, I didn't write the comics. And they didn't do that. I was like, oh, why wouldn't you go down that path? And so I think it was less interesting that she was the one to kill Kro. It was a red herring to be like, oh, these are the villains. And then you're like, no, they're not. It's Arishem and Ikaris. They're the villains. And then you're like, well, I'm glad, because the Deviants weren't really pulling their weight as a villain. So now you just don't, it's just too diluted across the board. And then the ending. Again, an extremely passive ending. Circe turns the Celestial who was being born out of the middle of the earth. And I don't know how that doesn't create a lot of problems. I was like, he did emerge from the core of the earth. So I think that would cause some major structural damage to the planet, but I guess not. She turned him into a rock, and again, she ruined that beautiful beach. I'm like, I guess it's going to become a tourist destination. I'm surprised that in the news coverage, they weren't like, it looks like a giant alien being coming out of the earth. Like, wasn't there satellite imagery that would have picked up on this? I'm surprised that this wasn't so unnoticed by the citizens of Earth with today's technology. And what about all the superpowered Avengers and characters like that? I mean, they definitely would have noticed, you would think. And it's hard to imagine something like this would happen and no Avengers would show up. But they didn't, because that would have made it interesting. So anyway, No big fight. How did they stop Ikaris? They bind him down. And you're like, oh, no one's going to punch him in the face. I mean, I guess Ikaris did a little bit, and I liked that. I thought that was great. Then they have the hive mind. They're like, we were trying to accomplish it, but what do you know? We do it naturally. That was kind of cool, but, I didn't think it was particularly well explained. And again, because everything's so passive and poorly explained, there's never any, you're not emotionally invested. So when anything happens, you're like, well, okay. And also, how do you have bracelets be a major part of the story here, and they're not the bracelets from Shang-Chi? A lot of people thought they might be because there are 10 Eternals, 10 bracelets, the 10 rings, but there weren't 10 of them being used here. So, and those two were dead before Phastos even made the bracelets, so he wouldn't have made bracelets for them. They don't look anything like so somebody might be like, well, maybe they are the bracelets because it's just too stupid to have two groups of 10 bracelets and they're not the same in the same cinematic universe. But they look different. They were made now, so they couldn't be the ones that Tony Leung was using centuries ago. Right? It just Wenwu. So it made no sense, but it was crazy. I'd be like, didn't we just do bracelets? So I thought that was just really weird. So overall, some very interesting elements. I do see and appreciate what Chloe Zhao is trying to do from an intellectual perspective. And it's a great, wonderful cast, but it's just too much. It's too much. It's too many characters. It's too much story to cover. It's too many ideas. Too many love triangles. 2 love triangles. Ikaris, Cersei, and Dane, and Ikaris, Cersei, and Sprite. Everybody wanted to make that into a threesome, apparently. And the Sprite one is underage and, totally inappropriate. And Dane was hardly in this movie. He really wasn't in the movie. We'll talk about the end credit scene where they, it was so embarrassing for Kit Harington at the end of the movie for him to be like, I'm kind of special too. And Cersei did not care. She was like, oh, that's nice. I mean, I'm like, wow, this relationship is so one-sided. So yeah, so the movie just really needed to focus. Someone needed to go through here with a red pen. A giant, Kevin Feige, the Celestial, needed to edit this thing down substantially. All right, so that's my spoiler review of Eternals. I'm excited to hear your thoughts down below, and stay tuned for all those videos over the next couple of days. All right, subscribe, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.